It's a global generosity movement that has raised millions of dollars. Today we mark Giving Tuesday, and with more on the deep need in our communities and how you can get involved, we're joined in studio by the Canadian co-founder of the movement, Nicole Danese from the Canada Helps team. Thank you so much for being with us here today. We had Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and today is Giving Tuesday here. I want to talk a little bit about what the need looks like here. Obviously, there are more people struggling. We're hearing from food banks, including yesterday, where they talk about the need to having to scale back services because they can't keep up with this demand. What are you seeing in terms of what the community's needs are?
So at Canada Helps, we list all 84,000 registered Canadian charities on our website, canadahelps.org. So there's a number of different organizations that rely on our tools to raise funds for their cause. Recent Ipsos polling that we've conducted at Canada Helps highlighted that about 9% of Canadians are actually relying on charities for essential needs, such as food and shelter. And really, we've heard anecdotal stories, as you mentioned, in terms of food banks and shelters that are still seeing a really significant demand. And we're hoping that Canadians can take action today on Giving Tuesday.
Last year, your organization raised, I believe, over $13 million in the span of 24 hours. You're hoping to surpass this goal here. When you narrow in on the impacts these donations have on the ground to the people who need it most, what can you tell people about the impacts of their donations?
So we're certainly hoping to surpass our goal today. And it really makes a difference because a lot of the charities in Canada, like I said, there's more than 84,000. They're very small and grassroots organizations. They're organizations that are really providing the lifeblood in many communities. And they are really there for people who need it at the time that they need it, like food banks and shelters, for example. There's a number of other organizations that all Canadians benefit from. There's hospital foundations, library foundations. There's really a charity for any cause that Canadians care about.
Does it make it more challenging that the need is higher now more than ever before when you're in terms of trying to meet that goal of being able to surpass that 13 million?
We've certainly heard anecdotally from a lot of charities that it is a really difficult time still. And we've heard, during the pandemic, it was quite difficult for a number of specific causes, perhaps mental health lines, for example, food banks, shelters, so on and so forth. But there's still this very elevated need out there, and we're really hoping that for those Canadians who are able to make a financial donation, that they are able to do that.
You work closely with charitable organizations. You had mentioned that the Canada Post strike, for instance, that we've been talking about here on CityNews 24/7, that's also impacting these organizations. Can you tell us how?
It is. So many organizations are still relying on direct mail, an appeal letter, a fundraising letter that perhaps would end up in your mailbox. And it still represents a relatively significant chunk for some organizations. For example, the Greater Toronto Distress Centre, they provide mental health crisis line services to individuals in the Greater Toronto area. They had about 145,000 interactions with people who needed their services at different times. They rely about 22% of their revenue on direct mail for their fundraising. So I was in touch with their team last week, and they were saying that they are now needing to sort of scramble to figure out how are they going to make up for that lost revenue. Also, organizations like the Canadian Cancer Society, they've told me that they've had a decrease of about 60% in mail donations so far this year, which amounts to about $2 million when you really look at the whole number. And at the end of the day, that's going to hit cancer research, important cancer research, and also services that support cancer patients and their families.
And you're here hoping to get the word out. For those watching at home, what are some ways that people can give back in a meaningful way on this Tuesday?
So there's so many ways to give back on Giving Tuesday. So for those individuals who perhaps were wanting to mail in their donation and cannot, we certainly charities don't want to hear that their donation's stuck in the mail right now. So give online if you can. Visit Canada Helps, and we have all 84,000 charities on our site. But if you can't make a financial donation, that is okay. You can volunteer, you can perform an act of kindness. There's so many different ways for you to really take today and reflect on the causes that you care about. And if not today, figure out another time, maybe donating blood in the future or checking in on a neighbor, for example.
Or holding the door.
Exactly.
It's as nice as that. And this is when you really get the bulk of your donations.
That's
the
right.
last 2 months, it really keeps a lot of these Canadian organizations going.
Yes, at Canada Helps, so we raise donations online, and we see about 40% of our donations come in November and December. Today on Giving Tuesday, it's about the second busiest day of the year, next to December 31st, as Canadians are trying to make those last-minute donations for that tax credit before the end of the year.
All right, Nicole Denese with Canada Helps. Make sure you visit that website on this Giving Tuesday. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Happy Giving Tuesday.
Yeah.